Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Running Tales podcast. My name's Craig Lewis. I'm a decidedly average runner over here in the UK, and I'm doing this podcast with my wife, Michelle. And we set out to tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners all across the globe, wherever we find them. It's a podcast where it's not necessarily about those exceptional athletes, those elite ones, but it's about people who are exceptional in a different way because of the remarkable things they've achieved and overcome. In today's episode, we have a double header with Kim Levinsky and Shai Ben-Dor, and we'll be talking about their amazing new film about ultra running, The Long Path, A Journey of Becoming. And when I say ultra running, I mean ultra running, because it tracks Kim's epic 350-mile FKT attempt along New York State's Long Path. Across arduous terrain, which at times she wasn't even supposed to be going across, and it challenged her both physically and mentally. Guys, this has all the ultra running classics in it, mesmerizing scenery, gnarly feet, and a support crew that made it all happen. But it also contains a really important mental health message as well. So we'll be getting into all of that over the next hour or so. And yeah, let's bring Shai and Kim in. Hi, and welcome to Running Tales.
Craig, thanks for having us.
You're
Yeah, really
welcome.
stoked to be here.
Yeah. So, Kim, if I can just start off really, because we've obviously chatted about this a couple of times before, and people can go and listen to the old episodes that we did, one before and one after you took this on. And there's an article on our Substack page. Anyone wants to check that out, it's runningtales.substack.com. But for those who are kind of hearing this story for the first time, do you want to just sort of tell them what the long path is and what you took on doing and what on earth possessed you to do it, I suppose.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Craig, for having me back and inviting Shai on the podcast. It's cool now that we're getting to talk three times, so it's awesome. Yeah, the New York Long Path is roughly 358 miles, or at least that's what it was when I did the FKT. Now, recently, it's expanded even further north. But it traverses from Albany, New York to New York City, and it's an incredibly diverse trail. It's got everything you can imagine on it. Very gnarly terrain in the Catskills, breathtaking views through the Shawangunk Mountains. There's railed trails, there's pavement miles, and you finish by running over the George Washington Bridge into New York City, which is kind of some whiplash after being on the trails for several hundred miles. But yeah, I did the trail in July of 2023 and had the unique opportunity to have a film crew came out. Shai Ben-Dor asked to come, and he has since created an incredibly beautiful film that we always describe it as it's a running film that's not really about running. So yeah, I'm excited to chat with you more about it this afternoon.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, because people should have listened to the first two episodes by now. They've had time. Before we go any further, you managed to complete the run. You were successful and achieved the FKT. So, yeah, well done again. I know I've said that to you in the past, but it's just an awesome achievement. And I think what this film does is bring home just how tough it was.
Yeah, it really, because Shai was out there the entire time, him and the producer, Seamus Murphy. So there's really no room for imagination on how tough it was. We had over 8 inches of rain throughout the 9.5 days. And the trails just really took a beating. There's trails in Harriman State Park that are still damaged from that, and that was a couple years ago now. So yeah, the film really captures everything that happened out there, and I know Shai has described the weather as its own character within the film, which I think is pretty accurate.
Yeah, for sure. And Shai, that was something I wanted to ask you actually, because when you're out in the sort of terrain that Kim was taking on the long path, it's a separate challenge in itself, I'm guessing, to try and film and capture that because, I mean, presumably you're not going to be able to follow her for all 358 miles, and unless you're setting your own FKT as well. But and then secondly, some of the terrain is I'm imagining quite tough to film on properly. How did you kind of work to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, it definitely. helped being super familiar with the trails. I think a really like important part of this whole film coming together is I actually grew up on one of the road sections of the long path and like had cut my teeth in a lot of the wilderness areas that like Kim was going through. Um, it was kind of this like perfect marriage of like person and place when Kim chose to do the long path because I'd been following along her Sasquatch journey for so long. Um, so I would say I learned a lot of what not to do just like growing up and hanging out with my friends and like exploring those wilderness areas. So with Kim's journey, it's like, like with a set FKT, it's like she's gonna be here at some point.
Yeah.
Um, when is she gonna be here? Like, how far is it? Like, this isn't my producer Seamus's first ultra running documentary with me. Um, so he's actually fairly experienced of like dropping me off somewhere and then like looping around a mountain and picking me up on the other side. So he was like my own miniature support crew on the digital and like physical end. So I would I would realistically like I basically before the trail started like built out a map and I was like, okay, these are the places that I think like really uniquely represent like each of these areas that she's going to pass through. And then it was the same as it always is. It's ultramath. Like where's the entrance? Where's the exit? Like where can I get someone? Like how many miles can I physically do in a day? I had two camera setups. I had one that was shrunk down, that was like my trail camera, and I would scoop that up with one hand. And if I needed to, it could collapse down into a backpack, which it often needed to because it was raining so often that
Yeah.
like to like wrap the cameras up, it's like it's so much harder to use sometimes that I just like pulled out my phone at a couple of times. And then I had a bigger camera just that hung out in the car. So whenever I got off the trail, I'd put that one down and then like wear this special backpack rig that allowed me to take like the weight off my arms and kind of like wear it like a backpack. Um, but ultimately, like I think I did on average like 8 to 10 miles a day with Kim. Um, with like anywhere from like 1500 to maybe 3 or 4K of climbing in a single day, especially during like the Catskills. I know there was one day where there's no out in the ridge line. Like it's like you're either going out and back halfway, like 8 miles in and 8 miles back, or you're doing like 13 through. So that
Yeah.
was like a day I knew like the Catskills are almost like they're these giant plateaus that are densely forested on top. So when like Kim talks about like running through the mountains like for 100 miles, you think of these like beautiful vistas and these like pointy like barren mountain tops. Like it's not. It's just like you're in this dense forest and then you go up 3,000 feet and you're in another dense forest that has this like airy wind to it that you can tell you're higher up, but it's just like there's 3 or 4 major viewpoints I would say in the Catskills. So like it was kind of important to catch her there. And if you watch the film, like I bet you can guess like what viewpoints I went to and like I just missed Kim. So there are portions of the movie where like in editing we had to figure out like, well, she talks about how beautiful this place is and how incredible it was, but like I she was 10 miles away and I never saw her, but I have all this footage. Um and then ultimately like, I think what makes this film hit so hard is the fact that Kim's crew fully like engulfed me, like as a human being, not just as like a filmmaker. They were like, it became one unit, all trying to figure it out. Like things were so hectic. Um, just the personalities that were involved and everything. I think this would have happened anyway, but just like the disaster nature of the weather we were facing made it almost like even more imperative, like all hands on deck, um, to get through this. And so yeah, damn, I lost my train of thought, but Anyway, that was kind of the gist of how we got through it and kind of like organized our patterns.
Yeah.
But from there, like, just like any good plan, it like quickly went out the window and became like a day by day operation of like, like when it's raining 3 inches, it's pretty hard to go forward or anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the crew that Kim had, and I just think that was something that really shone through, and we'll probably touch a little bit more on that in a minute. But I just wonder whether, well, two aspects really, because there was the kind of mental health aspects again, which we will go into detail on too. But the question I wanted to sort of ask you now was, did you set out with those ideas in mind, or did you sort of go in and think this is a blank canvas, we'll see what happens, and I'll do it at the end? Or was it always going to be a film that touched upon mental health and the support that ultra runners get from their crew? Yeah, I think I've kind of got to the end of that question.
Yeah. Do you wanna start that one off, Kim, or do you want me to take it?
You got it. This is your wheelhouse right here.
We've been sharing this wheelhouse for quite a while, but so it was really important going into this film to kind of make sure, like, from the get-go it was a mental health film. I'll just put That's the short answer. Um the long answer of that is it was very important for me to like understand Kim's boundaries, where she wanted to go, where she didn't want to go. Um these massive scale FKTs and long distance runs are like such a special mental headspace for those who are involved. Um, so to be a part of that, like, I needed to know where the bounds were. I was attracted to Kim's story because of her vulnerability and her talking about her mental health publicly through Sasquatch for a number of years. Um, so when the long path came up, it kind of gave me an excuse to kind of cold call her and like reach out to her. We had met once prior on like another documentary I was filming. Ultra runner Michael Ortiz did a game of hundos, like 100-mile race or run every weekend for 100 consecutive weekends. And Kim was there at the finale and we met, and she's basically like, "Hey, I'm running all these races and X, Y, and Z, basically along the long path in many ways." And I'm like, "Oh, that's like where I grew up. Like races need to happen there." Um, but anyway, uh, Kim was sharing her mental health, and I wanted that message. I like the metaphor of the long path. I think is so clear
Mm.
of like it doesn't end. There is no like completing it, but you learn how to handle the struggles of things along the way. Um, we always had a concept of what we wanted it to be, but we couldn't have known what we were going to run into. Um, and then like just because of how disjointed, like what it is you actually get and the story you want to tell, it took, I would say, about a year and a half in editing to have those two stories lay into each other really nicely. Like we bounced back and forth of what felt like a really like artistic mental health film that kind of like left kind of the ultra marathon stuff in the dust, and then it got like very detail oriented and like ultra marathon-y, but we lost a little bit of the mental health stuff. But for us it was finding that balance where like it was a journey and you could not zone out while it was happening, but you could kind of feel and place your own experiences in life inlaid with Kim's. Um, Kim shows a lot of vulnerability, but we did a really careful and not an accidental job. And like, it's not a trauma laden film. It's not like, oh my God, these are the dark things that happened in Kim's life and she persevered. It was about the processes she went through to get from a dark place and the support she had that allowed her that sort of like exploration. Like friends at their core like are people who make us feel safe and comfortable, like regardless of like what we're doing physically and otherwise. um so like when you boil the film down to that, it's a friend going one person going through something very hard and her friends joining her and helping along the way. You know, like Kim did every step herself, but she didn't really do any step alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And Kim, how I hesitate to use the word easy, but I suppose how hard easy was it to set yourself up upon this journey where you're going to be vulnerable because you're telling this story about your mental health. You're going to be vulnerable because you're running 358 miles through the most ridiculous terrain, and you're going to be tired and you're barely sleeping. And then you've got people putting a camera in your face at exactly those moments when you probably don't want the camera there, even though you signed up to it. I mean, how did you I suppose get your head around that whole process, and how comfortable or uncomfortable did it feel?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think it really comes down to, I mean, Shai touched on this earlier in one of his previous answers, but just having a really great relationship with him. And we've since become, close friends through this whole process. But I think really the underlying thing is just the trust between Shai and the producer Seamus. There were many talks before the film, before the FKT, before any cameras started rolling of, you know, what do you, Shai asking, what are you comfortable with? What are your expectations of the film? When we're out there, what is it you're looking for in terms of the film? You'll notice there's really very, very minimal interaction between me and the cameras during the actual FKT. I really only remember Shai asking one direct question. I think it was at the finish line of like, how are you feeling? Other than that, it was him and Seamus, moving around, taking video. But to be honest, after like the first half a day, I didn't even notice those two. They really truly became a part of our crew.
Yeah.
And in many ways, like these guys were a part of it in every sense of the word crew. They were helping, especially with navigation through the Catskills, because Shai has so much experience there. They were really instrumental in all the logistics of the long path. So I think in terms of like, maybe the emotions surrounding the film, it was a lot more of the build up to the premiere. I think was, Shai and I, we were talking probably every week. We were having chats, and that's what I so appreciated about Shai and Seamus was how much communication there was from start to finish and post film. Checking in and seeing how I was feeling after the premiere. We had many conversations about it. So I think, yeah, again, it just comes back to trust and having that open line of communication. But there was definitely, I mean, I'll be honest, there was a lot of fear surrounding the premiere of the film, and just like I had seen it, and that was another really special part of the experience was these guys wrote me in and allowed me to see the film, which I know isn't always the case in documentary films, but uh, especially a film about mental health, like it really helped me and my, kind of anxiety and fears surrounding, you know, 300 people seeing the film all at once in a movie theater. So yeah, I'm just super appreciative of Shai and Seamus in the way that they produced the film and allowed me to be a part of that process.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite moments on it is I think you're lying down. I don't know whether it was mid-run or at the end of the day or whatever, and you're being filmed and you're talking about, I really don't want this to be just something all super positive and blah 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 blah. I want you to show the negative sides as well. And you're kind of almost getting a little bit emotional, and then I can't remember whether something said or you just sort of click, oh, you're filming me. Don't film me when I'm like this. And the answer was kind of like, well, that's just what you've just asked me to do. That really made me laugh. I enjoyed that bit.
That was classic. That was with my buddy Matt Klein, who was actually filming, and I know I'm sure Shai is very appreciative of that clip, and it's one of my favorite moments from the FKT because of how ridiculous it was. I was
Yeah.
so loopy, and it was so hot that day. Like I was bordering, kind of heat, definitely overheating, and just rambling on the ground and saying, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And he captured that moment, which made it into the film.
Yeah.
Well, that was what was so special about, I remember being stuck at one point with the story, and I went back into just this, like, as you can expect, like, absolute pile of cell phone videos from the crew, from just like different areas on the trail. And I remember I probably had to spend a few days just to kind of like, you know, what day was this from? Like, where were we? Like, and then kind of like sift through it. But so much of the story is actually told through those little cell phone snippets. Um, and it's like kind of what pushes it over and makes you feel like you're a part of the crew stuck at the RV sometimes. Because those of us who have like run these long distances or crewed them, like it's a totally different feeling. Like when you're running X amount of miles, you're on this adventure, like you're in this headspace that's very like shrunken. And then like there's the people who care about us. It's like they are so far away, and they ate two gummy bears before they went out there. Like I'm so worried. So to have those like simultaneous things, like um there were times on the trail where like Kim's crew were like, "Do you want us to like poker about like sensitive subjects?" We're like, "No, like we want this to kind of like unfold and be kind of observational in so many ways." Um, One of like the little editing sequences, like Kim does actually increasingly break the fourth wall with the camera crew throughout the film. Because at the end of the first day, she goes around and it's like, "Oh yeah, you're supposed to be invisible." Um, and then like on day 8, where she's like screaming like "long path," she just like high fives the camera. It's like at that point she's like, "We're just like another body." Like by day 3, like Kim was had the 1,000-yard stare, probably most of it. Which is like that makes sense. Fully. Uh Yeah, so those are my comments on that. And just to like one more thing to just like add on to that, because I'm sure the next question is sort of like, well then where did all that audio come from of Kim kind of explaining her journey? Um Kind of a half a year or even a little bit more after she finished the FKT, we did one really long form 2-camera interview at her house, and I didn't bring any crew with me. I made sure it was like just the two of us and quiet, and the cat hopped into frame a couple of times.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I've had the cat a couple of times too previously.
oh, it's
He's
constant
the
without.
real star.
It's fine. This is a sliding door, and if it's open just a crack, my dog will open it with her head. You'll just hear like "gunk," and she'll come prancing in. But yeah, it was. That's why I think the way Kim is talking in that film feels so genuine in so many ways, because it's we wanted to capture that like one-on-one conversational feeling of just two friends in a room kind of like talking it out, because those spaces, as vulnerable as we get comfortable being, um to really explore them is like a difficult process. Like therapy isn't easy. um and kind of the things a story like this will remind people of, like I just wanted to make sure it was as safe as possible for Kim and as comfortable as possible. um and I think it also like pays off in the long end in the film and how it feels. It turns out just being like kind and genuine and like gentle is a pretty good like avenue, despite it being a 350-mile slugfest of a trail.
Yeah, for sure. No, as you were talking earlier about marrying the two elements, I think it really does come through, and that longer form interview plays I think, and I'm no expert at this by any means, but I think it plays a really important part in that. But one factor I was quite interested in, and you may both have different opinions on this, I don't know, was how the long path and doing these really long, hard challenges that develop your resilience and so on. I got the impression that the answer that the film was saying was these are great, but they're not going to solve everything by themselves. Is that right? Am I on the right path, long path there?
Yeah, nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the I guess we're giving away some spoilers, but the name of the film comes from that one scene, which Craig, you probably remember. But yeah, just kind of realizing it, and that was from help of crew was brave enough to say those words. Was you might not find what you're looking for out here,
Mm,
and I think that was something that I was processing for I mean, it's ridiculous to say, but like for a couple hundred miles at a time. But to be in that headspace where you can really go to those places where you can dig in and think about like what exactly am I doing out here, and um, what are we doing as a collective, I think too is an important question. I think that's been so cool, the conversations that have come from post film with we've done some screenings and have had the opportunity to interact with folks that have viewed the film, and it's kind of an ongoing or a repeated theme where we're hearing people kind of digest that, and it's been prompting people to think about like what am I looking for in my own running journey? Whether that's, a 5K runner or an ultra marathoner. I think we see it probably at a different level in the ultra marathon space, where I think, it's an important conversation to have anywhere, but I think particularly with ultra marathons and the ultras where I think they're becoming more popular. But it's maybe not a conversation that's taking place as much as it could or should be.
yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I've had on this podcast, we tend to touch upon some of those conversations. We've had a lot of people on who've overcome or battled mental health issues or addiction, or overcoming drug abuse or anything like that. And I suppose there's two things to say from that. What one, I wouldn't want to say every ultra runner, but there seems to be a thing that those who do ultras generally have, or often have something in their past that they're that's been there for them, and it's been part of their journey. But also, I think the thing that every runner I've spoken to who does a lot of running tends to say is, it's great, and there's this thing that running is therapy and all that sort of thing, and I think there's something to it. It can make you feel better, but the general opinion of most people I've spoken to is it can only get you so far, and
Yeah.
running won't solve the original trauma. It won't correct anything. It will help it better. It's a coping mechanism, but on its own, it's not everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's been so great about we've had the opportunity to have a licensed therapist as a part of our team, Sarah Strong. And because Shy and I, we can talk about it all the time from our own experiences, but to have, a professional who's able to, I think, back all that up with, science and everything, it's been really helpful. But yeah, it is interesting, the ultra space. I think a lot of us maybe fall into it because of like you just touched on, past addiction is a very common theme for folks where it is a space where you can in one way, like some might argue you're swapping one for the other, with ultra running. But yeah, that's something I think I've been on a lifelong journey, and I'll continue to have to learn and relearn the lesson of you know looking for the answers with ultra running, or if I'm struggling with something, immediately going out for a run rather than using some of the other tools that I've picked up through therapy. And each, as time goes on, it's getting a little bit easier, but it's something I think I will continue to have to work on and work through.
Yeah. And Shai, as a filmmaker, how how much more interesting, I suppose, or how much better can the documentaries be, if that's the right phrase, when you're look, there's nothing necessarily wrong with this. I'm sure there's loads of great documentaries about somebody going out and wanting to get the fastest whatever or win a race. That they're fine, they have their place. Great. But I think when there's something deeper about this, is that something that really resonates with you as a filmmaker?
Yeah. I've I've had a slew of phrases I've used to try and define the type of films I want to make in my career. It always started out as make people care about people. Um, just kind of like what shrinks us down to our core and helps us connect with each other in like a really genuine way. Um, there's absolutely nothing wrong with FKT films and the first climb and like never done, hardest thing ever, super cool, super beautiful. If it's about how big the mountain is, I don't know if you have a story. Um, like that's not like it's always going to be the same. Like you're either going to get to the top or you're not. And I think that's also a piece of what we're working against in communities. Um, I think I identify myself as like a lifelong athlete that then like fell off the cliff of coachlessness. Like you kind of get to the end, you have this community, you have this whether or not you want to define it this way, like this religious determination towards something guided by someone. We talk about addiction in different ways. It's just like something that is in your life consistently. Um, and it's easy to want to fill that void or think you can achieve a goal that will satisfy you in some way. Um, I've fallen victim to it many times. I think one of the things that Kim and I probably talk about most as we like kind of circle conversations about this is like making this movie, doing these podcasts, like working with Sarah to make classroom content to like teach kids this kind of peer-to-peer mental wellness, and then like getting on the phone and being like, damn, like I just got like hit face first by one of like the really basic lessons again. Like I got really manic, I took on too many different things, I like wanted to help everybody, I emptied my cup, and now I'm like overwhelmed. And I think it's less about seeing life as this like goal point to goal point to goal point, because then you're kind of just crashing at the end every time with like this buildup rather than having like this evenness that like you can really do better day by day. And the core message of all of this, beyond from the physical attributes and otherwise, is that mental health is health. And the work you're doing to get better is worth it, you know? And it's difficult to sometimes like realize that like your passion is also your vice, and like where is the healthy boundary? I think that's what makes Sarah so special for partnering with this project, because she is an ultra athlete and a therapist, and a lot of what she does is kind of destigmatize and separate these two kind of worlds of like, you absolutely have mental health and your running certainly plays a part of it, but where is that line between healthy and unhealthy? And it's not like she's perfect either. Like she ran 100 the other week. Not that that's a negative thing, but it's like, just because you're making these boundaries doesn't mean you're done doing what you love to do. It's
Mm.
just important to check in with ourselves and just see like, hey, am I feeling okay? It's as simple as that. And if not, if it's your first time recognizing and feeling that, man, like I don't know what it is, but I could use something. It's just this is a great caveat towards one of our nonprofit partners, Bigger Than the Trail, who's helped us along in this journey and like has been a part of Kim's mental health journey. When I first reached out to them, I thought they were a big org, and it's really just a couple of people, same as Kim, like homegrown, just trying to do something for the better. Um, and they just provide cost-free therapy for, I believe it's up to 2 months. the way they're doing it is slightly changing as time goes on as they explore different options, but it's in some small way socialized mental health care that they're just doing for the trail running community and really anyone who needs it. Um, but like you said, you know, I have nothing against ultra running films, but like as a filmmaker, my focus is on impact films, like headlined by people who had no interest in being found, and were just putting on for their community day in and day out. It's what Sasquatch is. It's grown organically, and if you ever make it out to one of Kim's races, like it's an absolute hoot. Um, and in so many ways, I tried to make what you felt at the end of the movie, like what a Sasquatch race kind of is. Like you're a little worn down from like a long emotional experience, but you feel warm and welcome and like surrounded by like people you feel safe.
Yeah, and also Kim, because I did want to mention this at some point, you somehow managed to find after all of that the most epic finish. You're sprinting over that bridge at the end there. Where did that energy come from? Because I'd have been crawling.
I know it's wild to say. Like I truly felt stronger at the end of the FKT than at the beginning. The first 2 days were horrendous. I think you probably picked up on that in the film. But I felt like trash, garbage, horrible the first couple days, and it was kind of the turning point was in the Catskills on arguably the hardest terrain, specifically the Devil's Path. But I was that's certainly not to say I felt like $1,000,000 at the end, but I definitely felt stronger at the end than at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, and um, the other thing I wanted to talk about, I think, was some of the wider messaging behind all of this, which I think probably came through in that bit at the end too, and Shai was just talking about there, um, because this film, the FKT and everything else you're doing, it's just part of an overall project, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's been special to see because there's so much overlap, right? There's so much overlap between it's not these aren't just standalone experiences.
Mm.
It's I do have a unique opportunity to be, to have a trail running company where, that's where the bulk of the audience came from for the premiere. But to see the ripple effect, I think, has been really incredible. People seeing the film and then sharing it within their community and then they share it with theirs and so on and so forth. That's been incredibly special. And to talk with, like, I've talked with so many people who are not runners or involved in the running space at all, who have watched the film and have been deeply moved. My mom shared it with some of her colleagues. She's a teacher, and I got to have some really cool conversations with them where, they are, and they made it very clear that we are not runners, and this is like incredibly difficult to even wrap our minds around this. But again, it was because it's a film that I think the way that Shai provided and packaged the messaging, it's so accessible for people. I think that's what's been so moving about the whole experience is talking with people who, whether they're in the running space or not in the running space, they're walking away from the film um, turning inward and looking at their own lived experiences and with their own community and with their own people and asking questions that are making big changes in their lives. I mean, I've talked to people. I just had a conversation with somebody who is literally quitting their job because of the messaging within the film that made them think about where they're at and the help that they need to get. I mean, that's powerful. It's really powerful to see a film have such an impact on people, and it's really a testament to the storytelling I think that Shai and Seamus um, put together in the film.
Yeah, and I think Shai mentioned that you mentioned earlier about talking about this project, the work around mental health with with children as well, and that's something which I think generally, I'm not so sure about the US, but certainly here in the UK, it's starting to happen more as a conversation within schools. But 5, 10 years ago, certainly 15, nobody was talking about this stuff with children at all. How important do you think that
No
is?
shot. I mean, it's massively important. I would I don't know how often I've brought it up, but like I grew up with fairly severe anxiety, and I had just like I learned to hide it really well. Um, so it's like I for the longest time I thought there was something wrong with me. Where if I had someone had that conversation, it's like this is what X, Y, and Z is. These are some of the feelings you can experience. This is the help you can get. um my household growing up, mental health wasn't uh uh a priority. My I or not a priority, but it just wasn't health. You
Yeah,
kind of grin and bear it, you get through it. I think like kind of the ages like 16 through college age are probably the most important, getting people through coaches and classrooms and otherwise. It's on the longer end for our micro-sized attention spans these days. Um, but kids still seem to enjoy getting out of class. For the one middle school screening we did, I feel the most pertinent piece about this, and it's been interesting because Kim and I don't have like a direct project. Like this is the long path mental health impact campaign. For us, it's this evergreen thing that now exists. Kim and I will use whatever platform we have whenever we have it to kind of push forward this message of people taking care of themselves and leaving the door open for people who need an ear or a friend in some way or another. Um, this project is kind of just, I know for me, it's become like a kind of a part of my life, in a very intimate way where like, we didn't put this in film festivals and stuff like that. The way it's been screening is like Kim said, it's like people we literally shake hands with, and then the people they shake hands with, and we become friends. And like, we've gotten into a lot of places I never would have expected. And it just kind of, the dominoes continue to fall outward. Um, and it's just every hour we get to talk about this subject, maybe we catch one person, maybe we don't. Um, but it's an hour that this message wouldn't have been put out there by us. I don't think we're the first people to want to jump up and be in front of the camera in any way. Um, but it is also that nature and fear that kind of makes us the right people to speak for it. So we're just doing what we can, and we appreciate you talking to us and like helping spread the message like to your listeners, and just the message in general. Um, but the overall goal and kind of where we're going is to kind of just continue screening, whether in these larger kind of capacities. The grassroots thing, like anything over like 50 people, we've realized is like a lift when you have a team of like maybe a third of a person at any given time between all of our full-time jobs. um and schools and otherwise, we have another theater screening coming up this summer and two more smaller screenings, with a couple other things floating around email for this coming fall. Um, but otherwise, the film's available for purchase for a small fee. It's one
Oh,
cent
and
per
show
mile of the long path.
when you say a small fee, I mean people might be thinking, I don't know, £10 or something, or $10.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is a small
Oh,
fee, isn't it? It's like £2.60 or something like that.
oh, you're in quid. This is funny because in US dollars, we actually set the price as 1 cent per mile of the long path. So like in US dollars, it's 358. So it's the
Ah,
exact distance of the trailers. Because Kim and I were like, it's like, what do we charge for this? It was like, oh, look, we'll just do like it's like less than five, more than two. But it's small, and it's
yeah.
the funds from that kind of like help us pay for some of the smaller things, just to kind of keep this grassroots kind of movement going. Um, but otherwise, this is really like a labor of love out of Kim. I would say Kim, Sarah, and I are the three main people who are bopping text messages back and forth and kind of chatting about all of this. But it's been a really beautiful ride. And I mean this project has changed my life for the better in so many ways, and forced me to be like vulnerable, and there was no hiding how tied and rooted this project was in my life and where I came from. Visually, it's a love letter to the area I grew up in, New York, because I grew up as like people are like, oh, you're from New York, and they imagine like Manhattan.
Yeah.
And at the time I was living in Brooklyn. I had been there for like 6 years at the time. Um, so it was really like traveling through my childhood in some strange way, uh, going through that. And then like when we finished the film, like I like had a 20-minute drive home. Like I was so close to my front door that like it was literally absurd. Like we went to like a bar with like my dog and my wife and like my best friend who's my producer, and we just kind of looked at each other and was like, is it over? Like it's like, do we have to go back and get another shot of Kim? Like, are we really done with this? Um, but the magic of the long path is you're never done. So that's the game.
Yeah. Just listening to, well, both of your passions as you talk about promoting mental health as an issue, and people talking about it and making sure that it goes into schools and that sort of thing. How It doesn't seem like you've come across this with the film, but how frustrating is it on a wider issue to hear some of the commentary that we get now about, which almost seems to be going backwards a few years, about, oh, it's just that you're a bit weak. Oh, it's not the same as physical health, or, it's not health, it's whatever else. Does that really frustrate you, or does it sort of galvanize you to keep pushing the message forward, or a bit of both, I suppose?
I think it's a constant reminder that the message of the film is really important and it's really
Mm.
needed. And I also think, like many other things in life, probably the voices you hear are the minority. At least I like to think so. It might be the loudest voice in the room, but you know, most people who are running and involved in the ultra endurance space, we are average Joe people with jobs. We're not elite athletes that have a full-time job of training. I think it's easy I think we all go through, probably most of us go through this when you first start out running. You kind of have this running journey of where you do more and more and more, and maybe you might get more drawn to that narrative of like, yeah, stay hard and choose strong, and you know, don't ever quit. If you stay in it, you're stronger. You get to the end, you're stronger. Um, but I think there are a lot of pockets of ultra running where there's amazing community. There's a lot of, grassroots, uh, local races, whether that's in the US or, I'm sure, Craig, you've found some great organizations by you where they're filled with normal everyday people
Oh, for
who want to
sure.
go
Yeah.
out and have fun. So I think it's a good reminder, like, let's amplify those voices and tell those stories of people who are out there. As a race director, I always say that's one of the biggest privileges and favorite parts of my job is I get to stand at the finish line and hear those stories, because people naturally, I think, they want to talk with the race director, which I love. I love that. Even when I'm so tired and I've been up for 2 days, to be able to talk with people at the finish line and hear their story of, it's not the moving stories aren't about like I got a PR of 55 minutes in this race. It's the stories of like I was told I would never run again because I had this
Yeah.
chronic illness, and because of the support of friends and family and great medical care, I've been able to get to the starting line and do a 5K, things like that. So, I think the film really it celebrates, I think, that side of ultra running, the community that you can find uh within activities like this is transformational. I mean, it's changed my life, and I hope you've seen that through the film. But starting out as a solo runner and somebody who deeply struggled with mental health and not even realizing it, to getting plugged in with the community, learning that it's okay to talk about it, and then learning there's resources to get help. Getting help and being surrounded by people who love you is totally transformational. And I wouldn't have found that if it hadn't been for ultra running.
Yeah. I
Well,
think
stop.
along this,
Oh, sorry.
so I think along similar lines, the other thing that I found the film did really, really well was the way it looked at you as and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, as a everyday runner. You're doing something which was just absolutely phenomenal, ridiculous, running that far over that through that terrain and so on. But there wasn't a lot of talk about nutrition. How am I going to get through this? What was the training that I did? And these are all sort of valid things, but I don't think it would have fitted very well with the way that the ethos and the mantra of the film. And what it kind of really painted you as, I'm just another runner going for another run, and this is what I find out when I'm out on my run. And okay, yeah, my run happens to be 358 miles through a jungle of plants and so on, and up mountains. But it was still that basic ethos of, almost inverted commas, anybody could do this, or whatever their challenge is.
Totally. And I say this all the time, whether it's through Sasquatch pre-race announcements or webinars or whatever, just talking with people. Like I really believe it's all relative. Like people can experience this transformational aspects of ultra running by doing a 5K and by starting their running journey and crossing their first finish line, or it doesn't even have to be a race. It could just be you're going out and you're starting to walk by yourself, and now you've walked a mile. You've never walked a mile before, and just seeing like what that can do to change you as a person. I think is really cool. And it is relative, even though I know 360 miles is very extreme. I do think people um, can find that in their own spaces and places.
Yeah, do you know, I think that's so true. I've spoken to so many people on this podcast who have done crazy sounding things, but with almost every single one of them, they they weren't the high school jock or superstar running track with hopes to get to the Olympics and all that. One or two were, but most weren't. A lot didn't even run at school. And aside from the amazing thing that they've done at the end, the 360-mile FKT or whatever it might be. The thing that really stands out and that they remember is that first run that they did when they were, I don't know, maybe a little bit overweight, maybe a bit unfit, hadn't done any exercise for years, were recovering from addiction of some sort, were recovering from depression or whatever else. And they talk about the sense of achievement they felt from running between um, lamppost A to lamppost B, a 18-minute mile pace, and that is so often the most huge thing, even more so than what they've gone on to achieve at any stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
100%.
I love those stories. I mean, that's my favorite thing. Shai and I have been discussing. He's going to be helping us at the Wild Goose Trail Festival, which is 100 mile coming up, and we're going to be doing a little bit of live streaming this year. But really, and I've said this to him and the other folks who are going to be helping. My goal is it's not that we don't care about who's winning the race, but um, some live streams get so caught up in like who's in front and who's winning it, and then what about all the other people, all the other folks back of the pack, mid pack. So those are the stories that we're we're gonna amplify through the live stream. But yeah, Craig, I totally agree with you. It's incredible what this sport can do, and then the magic really happens when you're able to tap into the mental health space and get help, I think, and
Yeah.
combine everything together.
Yeah, well, saw that, and I'm going to get this wrong because I can't remember. I was just trying to look it up. I wasn't quick enough. I think it was at Hard Rock, wasn't it, where the chap finished towards the back, and he was in his 80s or something, and
Mhm.
came across and finished. But I think his name was Bob. Someone, people will be
Mhm.
screaming it at the podcast, but it was that story actually took over and kind of captured everything
Yeah,
far more than the real success at
totally.
the start. It was really really cool. Um, Shai, on the subject there, Kim talking a little bit about you doing some more filming. Have you got any other projects in the pipeline that people should be looking out for that are exciting you at the moment?
Um, so it's been a very premiere heavy year for me. So this year I directed and shot. I guess I did a bunch of editing on The Long Path. That was my passion project for I would say 2 3 years. And it's still I mean it's still my passion project. We're here, aren't we?
Yeah,
Um, I've been working on another documentary kind of solo and quietly. Could be years until that's out, but on 25-year running skateboard contest in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. Bunch of indigenous skaters out that way, Lakota skateboarders who are doing some really cool things, and a really powerful show of community. I one of the That's kind of it sounds almost like a sidebar, but Kim knows and a lot of other people know that I rode my skateboard for a lot of the road sections on the long path. That's how I do a lot of the filming of runners in movement. But really sticking to that impact nature of the films I do of trying to design films around ideas and ideologies that really help people when you think about it. I think one of the key things that Kim said in this film that I think pertains so directly to your conversation of like relativity, like what it means to each person, is Kim says like to me like going to therapy is scarier than running 100. Um, so it's that reality of it's like it can be that hard to ask for help, like and our big message is often like how to ask for and how to provide help, basically destigmatizing that in both ways so that you as a human being know how to ask for help or know how to kind of look for someone loosely in crisis. We're not a mental health org, we're just people with a positive idea uh to get that help. um so yeah. uh
yeah. I mean,
this
I think that's really interesting. The whole idea of it being harder, and I certainly think there's some truth in that. I also think there's something really interesting around taking that first step, whether it's that first step outside the door to run for the first time, or whether it's the first step, I don't know, inside the door of the therapist's office. It always seems before you take that first step, like it's going to be the hardest thing in the world. But once you've taken it, it does get easier in both ultra running and mental health journeys. There's obviously hard things along the way, but these things sort of do get easier, and you can find some incredible things from taking that first step. So I've yeah, for me, anyone listening to this who's not sure about going out and running or not sure about taking up therapy or whatever it may be, geez, go ahead and take that first step because it's well worth it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think so. I
100%.
think something that Bigger Than the Trail does a great job with is taking down those obstacles, taking down those barriers. Because I was just talking with a friend today who was looking to get some help for her partner, and we were just talking about how when you're struggling with mental health, the last thing you want to do is go online and sift through thousands and thousands of therapists that are listed in a database on Psychology Today and figure out who takes my insurance, what kind of therapy do they offer? Do they have availability? Like it's literally the last thing that you have the headspace to handle in that
Yeah.
moment. And I think so many people, I mean, me for years, that was my excuse. Like, I can't handle it right now. I don't have the time or the energy to do that. And I think that's what's so great about an organization like Bigger Than the Trail is that, they match you with a therapist. You don't need insurance. It's provided by the generosity of donors who are making that possible for you to get the help that you need. And you might not stay with that therapist long term, but at least for, 2 months, you can start talking to somebody and get a little bit of relief, which is, I think, really important.
Yeah, brilliant. And we'll make sure send me all the details of these places and stuff so we can put links in the show notes and whatever, and people can check them out because we have a bit of an audience in the States, so hopefully that can help some people there too. But most importantly, where can people find the film and where can they get it and watch it? Because we want people to go and watch this film because it's great.
Yeah, everything, all the links to our nonprofit partners and to the website where you can rent the film is on thelongpathfilm.com. Can't believe that wasn't taken. We got it. So it's just that simple. There's no fancy spelling, there's no capital letters, just thelongpathfilm.com. And we are on Instagram at thelongpathfilm, real consistent. You could probably track down Kim and I's socials from there. You could follow her, Kim Levinsky, but more importantly, Sasquatch Trail Running is where all the squatching magic is at. Have I done this with you before, Kim? Um, but yeah, that's the gist of it and the main links that we're working on. But other than that, follow along Bigger Than the Trail too. And then our last nonprofit partner that I just want to shout out is New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. Um, Probably a bit of an outlier for a UK based show, but they are the organization, also nonprofit based volunteers that manage that trail. And that is such a disparate trail between multiple state parks and different entities and literal handshake deals around the state. So just the fact that Kim connected those various pieces and that the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference manages them and makes them accessible, just like top notch stuff. So thanks for helping share a light on all this. This has been an amazing conversation.
Oh, you're so welcome, and thank you to you both for joining me today. It has been a fantastic conversation, and I hope everybody out there listening to it has enjoyed it as much as I have. Yeah, check out the show notes. We'll have all the details of where you can find the film. I really would encourage you to go and watch it for $3.58. You can't spend it better than that. I'm pretty sure you can get a coffee or anything for near that. So yeah, go and check it out. Thank you so much for joining me on Running Tales. We'll have another podcast episode coming your way really soon. Do the usual stuff, like and review, and share it with all your friends. And I will catch you again soon for another episode of the Running Tales podcast.